If you invest in people, you're always going to get your return back. If you just want a warm body to come in and take the money from customers, that's great. But if you actually train that young person to lead, to be a shift leader or to be in management, you're going to be teaching them invaluable things. And I believe that that will come back around to you in some way, even if that employee chooses to leave. If you treat people the right way, your people will be good to you.
Well, welcome back to another episode of BeyondU, and today I'm joined with my co-host, Ben. And Ben, today we get to have a conversation with one of our professors here at Oklahoma Wesleyan. I almost said your name, which you are a professor here, so whoops. But we're joined by none other than Sam Johnson. Sam is our instructor of psychology here at Oklahoma Wesleyan. Sam, we're so glad that you're here with us today. And this conversation that we're having is really centered on the topic of organizational psychology. And we're going to be talking about how people view their work and even organizations, how they're, interacting with their employees, but even how organizations are rebounding after COVID. All kinds of points in this conversation. But Sam, we're so glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us. Tell us just a little bit about you. How did you get to OakWoo? How long have you been here? All the things about Sam.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually got my undergrad in family psychology, thinking that I would go into marriage and family therapy, but decided my senior year that I, in fact, did not want to go into marriage and family therapy, which is a great time to make that sort of decision.
For sure.
And so anyway, I decided to pursue what is called IO psychology, or industrial organizational psychology. And basically what it is the psychology of business. How businesses treat their most important asset, the people that work with them or work for them, depending on how you view that, right? And how people can structure their organizations to get the most out of their people and out of their product at the same time. I just thought it was a super fascinating fit between how a people person like myself can enter the workforce and make a difference in the workforce.
That's awesome.
So thinking that I'd go probably into human resources, that type of area, right as I finished my master's, 9/11 happened. So the economy dropped out. So in a really interesting way, I've been able to use my degree in all the ways that it wasn't intended to be used, right? And I love that at Oklahoma Wesleyan, we want every graduate to be a servant, to go out there and serve the Lord, no matter where they are. And I feel like I've used my degree no matter where I've been, even though it hasn't been in an official capacity as an industrial organizational psychologist. Yeah. So I've been at the university for close to 10 years now. This is my first year full-time teaching. I was an adjunct professor before that. I love it.
Tell us why, though.
Teaching.
Like, what do you love?
My favorite part, I think, and I was actually thinking about this the other day, is it uses all the parts of my personality in a way that I didn't really anticipate. So it helps, I love the organizational planning side of it and the program side of it and all the advising part. But I also love being in front of kids and talking to kids and explaining concepts and trying to, this is going to sound bad, but to dumb stuff down so they kind of get it.
I need to be dumbed down.
And all right.
When do we sign up for your class?
Anytime. I'd love to have you. But I love to, make things simple so they can understand some very complex theories of psychology. I would consider myself more of a generalist. I like all of the areas of psychology. So I think people are just fascinating. But my absolutely favorite part so far of being a professor is when a kid will come into my office, maybe close the door, maybe not, and just tell me what's going on. It's the best. And I love to see something in somebody and reflect that back to them, which is, a psychology thing all day long. And for them to go, oh, okay, that makes sense. To see something from a different perspective.
Yeah, sure.
And I love pouring into students like that. It's so fun.
My favorite part about your office, because we office together in the same hallway, Sam has a puzzle board in her office where students or even people like me can just come in and we can talk life and work on a puzzle. So it's not only talking, but it's also working with our hands.
Yeah.
This is totally off script, but what's the reason behind that?
It was my mom's idea. She's a brilliant woman. But I did want to have, and I had a huge office, which I'm very grateful for. But I wanted to have a space where kids could just come in and have something to do with their hands. because a lot of students are not comfortable with this. They're not comfortable with eye contact, and they don't know what to say. And I'm an adult and I'm old and it's weird. They don't know what to do, right? But if they come in and there's something to distract them, if there's, in child psychology, they use coloring books. You'll go in and you'll just start coloring with kid. And pretty soon that kid just starts opening up about whatever. It's the same thing with college students, but we use a puzzle. And they'll sit down and they'll do it, even if they're not puzzle people, they'll do a couple of pieces. And before you know it, we're just having a really relaxed conversation. So it's been really fun. Now, I will say that President Jim Dunn, hi, Jim, stopped by earlier today, and I was working on the puzzle.
I thought maybe you went in your office and Jim was just working on the puzzle.
No, I would love that. I would love that. Yeah, exactly. But it's a good brain break. It just helps your brain to work a little differently.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So you've got, the one common denominator for Sam for you is whether it's the classroom, whether it's, more marriage and family therapy, whether it's organizational, is the people, right? That's
Absolutely.
The focus for you is just
100%.
that people. So you've got a background in some just kind of behavioral psychology, but then what was it about org psych that you're like, interesting. I think I'd like to do that.
Yeah, I thought, well, if I can go into the business world and make a difference in the business world as a believer, that would be great. That was basically it. Yeah, that connection.
Yeah.
We're going to cut there because we were going to both go in at the same time. So we're going to keep going. So Sam, tell us a little bit, why is organizational psychology, org psych, why is it an important area of focus right now?
Well, a lot of companies are rebounding coming off of COVID, and they're trying to figure out how to get the most out of their people. That's what every company or organization is after, right? They want the best from their people, and they want to make it worth their money. If I give you $100,000 a year, I want that back in some way. I need to see an investment, a return on that in some way. One of the biggest shifts after COVID, which I'm not sure if you asked, but here we go, is that does this job really have to be done at work? Do I need to be there in person? And for most of the jobs, we figured out, no,
not so much.
Right.
You don't have to be there in person. Some things, obviously, some industries you have to be. Some industries it's recommended that you are. But for the most part, the 40-hour go to work, 40 hours a week is really not applicable for people. And it's been interesting because people who work from home or who work a portion of their week from home, there was one company that just don't come into the office on Mondays or Fridays. We want you here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll have our in-person meetings during that time. Monday and Friday, you work from home. They found that they actually did not lose any productivity. Because what happens, even if a person is an hourly employee versus a salary employee, even if they're clocked in at home, they treat time differently. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. If I'm at work in my office doing a puzzle or otherwise, I'm on the company's time. If I'm there until 5, I'm on the company's time until 5. But if I'm working from home and if I have a kid who has soccer practice at 4, I'm going to get my work done by 4. So the work is going to get done,
right?
But it's my time that I went out by 4 so I can go to the soccer game. So it's a different way of thinking about work and responsibility and all of that. The majority of people today just want to be trusted.
Right.
They don't want to be micromanaged, right? We've all had that manager. They don't want to clock in and out of their time. They're accountable because they get the work done or they do the job that they were hired to do. They don't want somebody looking over their shoulder. And most adults will ask if they need help or I can't get this project done in that time frame. That's unreasonable, etc. And a lot of managers are having to go, wait a minute, I don't know how to manage somebody who I don't have to manage, right? It's just a completely different thing.
Well, it's like we're taking a post-COVID world, especially in the context of business, and trying to, in some organizations, fit it back into a pre-COVID existence, and that's just not going to work.
Yeah, people aren't having it.
So what are... Fair enough.
Yeah, they don't want to work like that.
Both employees, but also employers, I would imagine. And so what are some of those common trends or tendencies that you're seeing in organizations that might be struggling to find their footing in this post-COVID? Like, we're trying to figure out, are you in Tuesday through Thursday? Like, what are some of those common tendencies for the organizations that might be struggling to find that footing?
That's definitely the main one I'm seeing is, does this job have to be done at the workplace? Right. The other thing I would say is, are our job descriptions really up to snuff? Are they up to date? Are they accurate? And, when you talk about job descriptions, half of us kind of go, fall asleep on that one. But they are really important, because if you know what's expected of you as an employee, you're able to meet those expectations. Most job descriptions aren't really ever looked at unless someone leaves that spot, and then HR has to fill that spot. And HR is like, oh, hey, what do you guys do? And everybody who's left goes, I have no idea. A couple of this, and can they do it from home? So it's this big give and take situation of how much do you trust your people? How much do you let them have the reins to things versus how much do you want them in the office? It's just, and it of course depends on your industry too.
Yeah. Well, Covey talks about the speed of trust and how that builds an organization faster than anything. So for the organizations that might actually be thriving in this post-COVID world, what are some of those themes and tendencies that we see? Maybe it's built on trust. Honestly, that might be the undertow here in all of this. But
I think it is. And if you're working at home and you're not getting your job done, then you deserve to be fired. Sorry, you do.
For
you're
sure.
Still on the company's dot. They're paying you to do something. Yeah. So, but companies have to be willing to take that risk.
For sure.
They have to be willing to invest in people. And that's really tricky because people are tricky. Yeah. Right? They just are. But you have to be willing to invest, knowing full well that 5 minutes later, they might leave your organization and go to your competitor. That's okay. If you treat people the right way, your people will be good to you. It's amazing how that happens. It's a very simple thing to say. I mean, most things in psychology are very simple. If you have a drinking problem, stop drinking. It's a very simple thing. It's accurate, but it's not easy.
Sure.
Right.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're good to your people and you communicate well, okay, well, that's simple to say. Sometimes that's not the easiest thing to do.
For sure.
But if you do that, people are fairly loyal these days.
If we broaden this conversation out a little bit more, Sam, and look at just bigger than just the last 5 years or so, which I can't believe COVID was
Crazy.
5 years ago. But I know for my parents and my grandparents, the whole idea was you work for a company right out of college, you stay for 35 years, you make a career of it, they treat you well, you retire, but those days are done, right? I mean, by and large, right?
Done. By and large, done.
So how has the relationship between employer and employees changed over time, right? Because it is different, and now employers want to make sure that they're increasing profitability and getting most out of their employees, and employees kind of have an idea of like what else is out there. So can you just talk about some of that dynamic and how some of that's changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, recent trends, I think Tori was sharing me some studies that she had read. The most you're getting out of a new employee is 3 years.
At max.
At max. Like
of
that's
any age? So not just like, okay.
Of any age. And unfortunately, I think that's something that's really lacking in the generation that's upcoming, because you have a generation of people who got participation trophies. No child was left behind. They've been told they're awesome by everybody, and whatever they do is perfect. I mean, it's a nice world to live in, but it's not the actual real world or the working world. They get into their first jobs and they don't understand why they aren't promoted in 6 months. They don't understand why they're not in management already.
Making 6
Or
digits
starting
or
in management.
Correct. Because they're obviously smarter than their current manager, and they're smarter than the guy above him, and they're probably smarter than the guy above him. So why? And I am perfect in every way. So why am I not being appreciated here? Why do they not see my potential? Well, it takes time.
Yeah.
And I hope that we are graduating students who have enough integrity to do the right thing when nobody's watching, right? And so much of our day-to-day work, nobody is watching us. We just have to get the work done and do it well. The other part about our generation right now coming up is they are used to instantaneous feedback on everything that they share, post, say, whatever, right? And we've created this situation where I put up a picture and I get 20 likes. So I put up another picture and I get 20 more likes. And then I put up another, et cetera. And so it feeds into the mind of the worker and the psychology person. Well, you go to work, you're not going to get an attaboy and an attagirl unless it's at the end of a quarter, maybe, and you've met your goal and then some.
Yeah.
Right? And from an employer's viewpoint, well, you got your paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's your thank you. There's your
You're
like.
welcome. And there's pizza in the break room, which, by the way, pizza's not cutting it anymore.
Right.
But I think a lot of people have an unrealistic expectation that a company is going to bend over backwards because they just the best thing in the world walked through the door. And maybe it did. And maybe you have great ideas, but you've got to grit it out for a while.
Yeah.
You've got to understand that company's culture, how it works, pay your time, pay your dues. And kids these days don't do that in their normal everyday growing up. They just don't. So they need to be prepared for that reality check. On the other hand, what businesses can do is really, I think the key to it is a really good mentor their first year. And you want it, and every organization, you have to be really careful about middle management. People don't leave companies because they don't agree with the president or with the CEO of the company, or they don't like the company, or they don't like the product, or they don't even like their team workers. None of that really plays a factor. Most people leave their jobs because they don't like who manages them. They don't like their boss. We have all had that boss, right? Where we're like, forget it. I don't care how much money I make. I don't care how great the benefits are. And I don't care. I can't work for this person anymore, right? We've all been there. So companies have to be really careful who they have in management. And I think they need to be very wise to bring this young generation on and mentor them. This is the way this business works. This is the way this company works. This is how, these are some of the office politics. This is the dress code. Yes, you have to dress appropriately. You're not going to get promoted for maybe 6 years. You good with that? If you're good with that, let's stick it out and let's see, you know. But unfortunately, if they're not getting that consistent attagirl, attaboy, that dopamine hit exactly that they're used to getting because we've set them up that way, man, they get frustrated real fast.
Yeah. There's an element of reciprocity that I hear you talking about as you're explaining this, that this rising generation, as they enter the workforce, there's an element of understanding that they need to have about the culture of whatever workplace they might find themselves in. But I think on the flip side of that coin, we don't want to just leave it solely on the hands of the employee trying to understand the employer.
Correct.
There's a necessary leadership element here that the employer needs to understand their employee. And it oftentimes looks like going above and beyond the job and trying to do research to discover, to even, heaven forbid, sit down and have a cup of coffee with someone that might be a little bit younger than you.
Absolutely.
With less experience.
100%. That's where
so what would you say to the leader that is potentially working with some millennials, Gen Zs, whoever it might be, that they're like, man, this is just not working? What advice would you speak into them, kind of on that flip side of the coin of like, hey, it's not just the employee's job to understand the employer and its work culture,
right?
But it's also the employer's job to start to understand some of the tendencies and trends of the employees that are rising into the workforce.
You're 100%. And it all goes back to being good to your people.
For sure.
It all goes back to that relationship, right? And you think, well, I'm an accountant. I don't need to have relationships with people. Yeah, you do. And that's one of the big things that we strive here at Oklahoma Wesleyan is that emotional intelligence. And I know Professor Lynn was on earlier. It's really important because no matter what industry you go into, you'll be dealing with people. You'll be working with people. So it's getting to know these young workers. And maybe they're only there for a year. Maybe they can't hack it, or they don't like it, or it's not for them, whatever, and they're gone in 6 months. You still made a connection. You still showed them things. And our generation, you have to be open to that mentorship. You are not going to succeed at your job 100% of the time.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And our kids are also coming with a lot of anxiety, this new generation. And so you take anxiety and you pair it with, I need a consistent dopamine hit from the attaboy, attagirl, and they get to work and it's really hard for them to function. So there needs to be a lot of grace and a lot of time and investment in people. If you invest in people, you're always going to get your return back. If you just want a warm body to come in and take the money from customers, that's great. But if you actually train that young person to lead, to be a shift leader or to be in management or to look past, you're going to be teaching them invaluable things. And I believe that will come back around to you in some way, even if that employee chooses to leave.
And that's one of the elements I hear you talking about, Sam, and maybe not as explicitly, but part of it on the employer side then is giving a reasonable permission for failure. Right?
100%.
Right? And I'm not saying fireball. That's not what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
But if the expectation for a graduating student is, I'm gonna nail it, I'm gonna be great, and they find out quickly that maybe I'm not. Right? Part of it on the employer side is, okay, you made a mistake. Let's talk about
what
this.
What did you learn about that?
And so that's part of it too. It sounds like is just providing an atmosphere.
A lot of
like
grace.
That.
Yeah.
Right?
A lot of and mentorship. Okay, well, you bombed in that meeting. So let's talk about not how to do that in the next meeting. Okay. So you went off and you just started talking and you never introduced yourself and they didn't know who you were because you're nervous. And I get that, but stop, and let's talk through this and let's practice.
But even telling young people you failed there, but that doesn't mean that you are a failure. And I think there's a difference between, because I think the tendency for these young people is they globalize everything, right?
Yes.
I failed this test. That means I'm a failure in life.
Correct.
No, you bombed a test. Okay. It happens.
It happens.
So I think it's part of it too.
We expect it.
It's helping them in context. No, you dropped the ball here, but.
Right. We still like you.
Yeah,
You're still
you
valued
still have things to
here.
offer. Yeah.
The other thing that employers are having to do is really figure out a way to help their employees have an ownership, whether that's stock options, actual cash, whatever that looks like. But they feel like they belong there and they feel like they are making a difference there. Yeah. Why would I leave an organization where if I do well and my organization does well, I get kickback? It's great. Why would I leave? I'm invested. The sooner you get a person invested in your vision, in your path, in your product, whatever, the sooner they're invested and you have that trust built up, you're going to have an employee for a good long time.
So it's really a journey of building culture.
100%.
I mean, if we take a look at the things that different generations prioritize and their place of work, I think what we're going to find in this rising workforce in Gen Z is it's going to be less about, not that it's not about money, because for some it will
it's always
be
about money,
but for others it might be more that workplace culture and the values that are just core to the essence of the everyday functions of that workspace. So what's the role of culture in this conversation and this, as especially as leaders are trying to develop a work environment that is conducive for multiple generations in the same workspace? Like, where does culture come in on that?
I think culture is huge because, like I said, if you don't feel like you belong and that you have a say in where you work, it's pretty boring to work there.
For sure.
Right? It just is. It's just really dull. So I think that there's a definite element of that to building that culture, but it goes both ways. And the young people entering the workforce have a lot to offer.
For sure.
A lot to offer. Great ideas. Social media. They know what buttons to press on a phone. I have no idea what I'm doing with that stuff. But they do, right? Yeah. They can get a marketing campaign out in 10 minutes. I don't even know what that is. So they know what to do. We just have to trust them to do it. They're bringing really good energy, really fresh ideas, but they also want to be rewarded for that.
For sure.
And it takes a lot less money overall to retain a good employee or even a halfway decent employee than it does to hire a new one, train them, get them ready for them to go to the competitor. And that's what happens in companies who aren't really aware of that culture piece and who aren't good to their people. Again, simple, but it's not necessarily easy. But be good to people. And it'll come back to you.
Yeah, people over profit, right?
Yeah.
Both are important, right? But if you invest in your
Right.
people, you have to trust that you'll get a return on the investment.
You have to trust in some way that that will happen. Yeah.
So Sam, what are we doing I mean, here at Oakwood, right? So part of your passion is developing students, if they're in your office or in your classroom, regardless of major, but preparing them for life after college and entering the workforce.
Yeah.
What are some things that you or we are doing now to help them to be more ready to enter the workforce?
That's a really good question. I know for one thing in my classes, I don't allow them to have phones. That's a big, they don't like it. And I understand why they don't like it. But if we were having this conversation and I had my phone out, it changes our entire conversation.
Totally does. Yeah.
Even if I never touch it, if it never goes off, if it's not screen up, it's screen down. If I had my phone sitting right here, you would have a different feeling about this conversation. And one of the first things I tell my students is, out of respect for me, out of respect for you, out of respect for this class, I don't allow cell phones in the class because people are important. And if you've got a person in front of you, that's the most important thing. And listen, I am not perfect at this by any stretch. The other day, I had a student come and work on his or her schedule. And so he or she's schedule got taken care of. And then he or she I didn't want to give away who it is. He or she stuck around to talk. And in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, I've got so much to do. And just that quickly, I went, nope, this is the most important thing I have right this second. Everything else will get done. And that's what employers need to the work will get done.
Always does.
But if a person is in the middle of a crisis or has had a death in the family, be good to your people. Show up for stuff. People are important. People are the most important. And we all have been treated like we weren't important, and we've all unfortunately treated somebody else that way. But I think, so that's one thing I think we do as a faculty, as a staff. If you need to talk about it, we talking about it. It's fine. You need to interrupt me, I'm interruptible. I'm approachable and I'm interruptible. Another trend that we're seeing in the workplace is people are on their phone a whole lot at work, to the point where every time their current supervisor or higher ups, they're on their phone, on it, not sitting on the table even, but they have to have their phone. It's called cell phone addiction. It's out there. It's real. And they can't not have their phone. It gives them anxiety to not have their phone.
Yeah, it's a sense of security.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And if you work with your phone, I get it. Right. But these are situations where they don't work with their phone. Just don't have it there. And I think they got to be prepared for that. And they can't be taking pictures all day of themselves at work. That's another huge trend that we keep seeing. Nobody cares what your desk looks like. And your employer really doesn't care what your desk looks like. Get to work. Get to work, right? So they're like, what are you doing? So you have to be really respectful. And employers want somebody who can come into the workplace and do their job and do it well, but also work with people around them and work well with people. But people are the most important part of that equation.
So as you think just about your work here and investing in students, what is it that gives you hope about this generation or about the work that you're doing?
I think the majority of the students here, and probably on other Christian campuses as well, they know what they want. They know exactly what they want. They know they have to get a college degree to get it, and this is one of those steps, but they definitely are more driven. I think I talked at the beginning, I had no idea what I wanted to major in. I was a second semester junior by the time I finally picked a major. And they came to me and they said, we've never had a second semester junior that's undeclared. You've got to pick something. But I didn't know. I don't think you're supposed to know. I don't think you're supposed to know. But these kids, they know what they want. And so many of them want to make a difference. They want to make a difference. Sometimes, and especially in the business world, it's going to take some time to make that difference. And they don't quite understand that pace and that pressure, but they want to make a difference in their world. We are sending out world changers. We definitely are. Yeah. And as far as the psychology students, I've got a group right now who are compassionate, who are good listeners, who want to help people, who want to help children, all of those things that you just love in a person, you know. I think they're going to do great things.
So Sam, just in kind of closing here, give us, and by us, I mean those that might be listening that are about to enter the workforce. And then on the flip side of this coin, a same but different question of
Sure.
those that are ready to receive this incoming generation into the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Just impart some advice.
The first thing I would give young people entering the workforce is to practice interviewing. When I say practice interviewing, I'm not saying practice in your head in the mirror what you're going to say when they ask you what you want to do today. That's not practice. Sit down and feel the pressure of sitting in front of a couple of older people who you don't know, and they ask you about yourself. Feel that, because the more comfortable you get with that feeling, the better interviewer you'll be, and the more likely you are to get the job. So many of these kids interview and they are nervous. I get it. I'm nervous right now, and we're halfway through this. We're almost done with this podcast. I'm nervous, but you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's good.
And for this generation, they're going to be uncomfortable in the business world for a good couple of years. It's okay. Get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Find a mentor. Find somebody that you click with in your company and get to know them and pick their brain and figure out how to succeed in that industry. For employers, again, it all goes back. Be good to your people.
Yeah.
Be good to them.
Yeah. That's good.
Just be really good.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for
the
having me.
wisdom. Yeah, until next time.